Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for my first official podcast with my first guest, Victoria Nino. She is a mother via donor eggs and the founder of Infertility Unfiltered. And Victoria and I met probably, maybe 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago at the beginning of her journey. And we kind of reconnected the last like 3, 4 years. And she's just become such an amazing sister in this fertility community for me. And we have done a lot of projects together. And I was just so excited that she was willing to come on to be my first guest um, for my podcast. So, Victoria, tell us a little bit about Infertility Unfiltered and the community that you've created through Infertility Unfiltered, and as well as your online community that you now have available. Super excited about that. I think it allows a lot of women to connect all over the world. So I'd love to hear more about how that kind of came about and came into fruition.
Yes, absolutely. So I always start by telling people I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a scientist. I am just a connector. And so when I first started sharing my journey out loud publicly, I realized how many people helped me that I didn't even know that I just needed to know because they had a very similar journey. And so I actually, after, years of infertility and sadness and just trial and error, and eventually saying, okay, I'm going to use an egg donor, got pregnant, and then was a mom after all of this trauma and grief and was like, oh my God, this is hard. This is scary. And I joined a support group for moms locally. And it was amazing. There was a lot of education that came into it, but there was also sharing with people that were in the same stage as you. And I looked at the owner and I said, and this is me, very postpartum, I said, hey, like women who want to become moms, they need this kind of support too. And she was like, I totally agree. You should run it. You should do it. And I was like, okay. I have like this 6 week old baby, but sure. And because she said, I'll let you use my space in the beginning to help you get it off the ground. And I was like, I'm going to say yes. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to say yes. And so I just threw it out there on social media and was like, hey, does anyone want to meet up and do this thing? I have this idea. And I brought in some really awesome experts and we filled up overnight. And we did that, I don't know, 6 times maybe before COVID happened. And then we had to go virtual and never went back. Although I'll say I miss the in-person. I hope to one day do that again. But we're now virtual. And like you said, reaching people in other countries. I've had people in Singapore and other countries joining at like 4 in the morning because this type of program isn't available widely. And so um, now we're doing multiple what we call a series. It's a class series. It's 6 weeks at a time based on a particular journey. So there's one for people just trying to get pregnant in general. And then there's donor conception. There's secondary infertility. We've had one around pregnancy and motherhood. And then we since doing that have now extended to more of an online community, like you said, so that people who don't have it the time to join, a class series can still get in there, listen to audios, jump in a support group every month or two, and still be able to meet all of the other people on their same journey.
Well, I've had the honor to be a part of a few of your series, and I
Yeah.
just am so impressed with the sistership that's built in these groups. And I think just being able to connect with other women that are going through a similar path. And I think that even though you can have a very loving family, a loving partner, there's still isolation. And a lot of patients that I see still feel very alone. And they kind of, it's sort of like a burden. They don't want to burden their family about it. So I think having this community is so key. And I've had a number of patients that have gone through your program, Victoria, and they absolutely love it. And it's so helpful because everyone's in a different phase, you learn from each other too. Not only do you learn from the speakers, but I think also from one another to kind of go, what protocol did your doctor use?
Right.
And so there's a lot of comparison of notes, especially different regions, right? It's like different areas of the country, there's different protocols. So
Yeah.
I've noticed that in some of the lectures that I've been in or talks. So and so even something like that, that's so valuable, you don't even realize. Like even asking, hey, did you have this testing done during your ERA? Did you have an Emma and an Alice? And were you ruled out for endometriosis? So like not simple, but just one extra step that maybe your reproductive endocrinologist didn't try it. And that could be the
Absolutely.
key. That could be the thing that's missing in your
Yeah.
protocol. So
Yeah, that to me, that's the most value is connecting with these other women that are, on the same journey, but like you said, maybe at a different phase. One of the things
mhm.
that we have them do, like the first night of a series, is I have them join each like a WhatsApp group together so that they can chat with each other in between weeks. And they're always kind of like, oh, she's like forcing us to like talk to these strangers we just met and text each other. And literally by the first week they come back and I'm like, so has the WhatsApp been using, have you guys been active? And they're like, oh my God, nonstop. Like that's my new lifeline. Like these are my
Uh-huh.
friends. Like we share every day, we talk every day. And then I hear from people that joined years ago that still use their WhatsApp every day. They're still talking and then meeting up on their own, whether it's like some of them are taking vacations together, some of
That's
them just
amazing.
monthly Zoom. Like it's truly like a lifelong friendship because these are people that feel your pain as if it's their own because it is their own.
Mhm.
And it's
That's
just such a
incredible.
powerful
I love
thing.
that. Mhm. So, in terms of the online community, what's that like, and how is that different than the classes that are offered in the workshops?
So the online community, the easiest way to explain it, it's like a Facebook group, but not on Facebook.
Hmm.
But the difference is we have built in like resources. So there's different libraries, if you will, for every kind of topic you can think of. Whether it be, like I said, donor conception or pregnancy after loss or secondary infertility. We're sharing podcasts, which this one will be saved in there as well. Articles, blogs, news releases. We're starting conversations like, hey, how's everyone feeling? What do you think about this? And then we
Hmm.
also offer 2 to 3 kind of support sessions that you can just pop in. So if you're a member, and we have some women that come to every single one because it's all included and it's just another place to feel like you have support, and can talk to other people whenever you need it.
So now, is this also linked to the series as well? Is it something that's kind of also offered as part of the
Yes,
series
you can do
classes?
both. Yep. Some
Okay.
people will do both. I recommend both because
Hmm.
you start with this series and then you join the network and you can just continue on. It's like a small fee to just pay all at once and then you have it forever.
Hmm.
Versus like paying monthly. But again, not everyone can join a series and it makes more sense to do that.
Right. And they kind of want to dip their toe in it first and see,
Right.
kind of check it
Right.
out. That's a really good introduction, I think, for people that are just beginning and
Yeah.
they're not quite sure. Because I do have experience with some patients that are a little bit more maybe like shy, they're
Yes.
reserved, they're
Yes.
introverts by nature, and they're very private. So I think that's a really great resource for women that maybe aren't quite comfortable to, extend themselves into like a support group yet. So
Absolutely.
I think that's a wonderful way to access resources. And I'm part of the community too. So I've seen some of the things that are shared, like research articles and different studies that have been published. So I think that's also really helpful too, to
Mhm.
kind of see like, okay, what else is out there in terms of what's available for my fertility treatments and what is efficacy based too,
Yep.
if it's like a complementary or adjunctive treatment. So I find, of course, my science brain, I'm like, these studies look good.
Yeah.
so,
Yep.
but I wanted to kind of go back to your journey, Victoria, because every time I read any of your blogs, I am just so touched by your story. And I think that a lot of women can really connect with the journey that you've gone through. So I just wanted, if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. That's always hard for me to do because I don't know. I always tell it differently, I guess. And it's also such in hindsight right now for me. But I started trying to become pregnant at the age of 29. when we got married and thought, I had this grand plan of like the date, even like the sign of my baby and all the things that I think we all just think naturally it's just going to happen the way we want. That plan was never the plan. And after years, gosh, I want to say 3 years of just trying naturally, because again, I think I was in denial. I finally said, okay, I guess I should go to the doctor. This isn't happening. And did some testing and had very low AMH. My FSH wasn't great and was kind of hit over the head of like, hey, yeah, you're only 33 or whatever I was at that point, but your eggs are looking more like 45. And I was like, what are you talking about? What did I do? And I kept thinking it was something I did, something I could kind of controlled. I blamed myself. Um, and I still tried with my own eggs. I still thought, well, if there's a chance, I want to take the chance. And so I did multiple rounds of IVF. I first started with IUI. I think we did 5 IUIs, which I'm like, I look back, like, why did I do that? Um, but I had to try. I had to go down that path to just see what, how far I could go, like with my own eggs. I think everyone has a point where they're like, okay, I think I've done enough. I think this is where I close that door and open a new one. And I just was not ready to close the door. I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And my husband was also pushing. He also was not comfortable with the idea of an egg donor. And then finally, after I remember my last retrieval with one egg, that we didn't even get, that's when I stopped and I was like, okay, we can't keep doing this. My body is done. My heart is over this. Our bank account was depleting. And he still was like, but what if? What if you try this other thing? And I looked at him in the face and I said, no, no more. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. And he was like, okay, so what does this mean? And we sat down with our doctor at the time and had a long conversation about what it means to use an egg donor. And she had many stories to share with us about other patients who had gotten to the other side and were very happy, and their kids were happy and everyone was healthy. And she talked about epigenetics, which that's where I first learned about that. And I started to just get on board with it little by little, because I think I just kept going back to, what is my goal? My goal is to be a mom. My goal isn't to pass on my genetics. That would have been nice, I guess, at the time. But now that I'm a mom, I'm like, I never needed genetics. Like that wasn't, why did I push so hard for that? My genetics aren't even great. And so we said, okay, we'll try. And we found an egg donor who looked like she could have probably been my twin. From what my doctor said, she even like looked like or sounded like me, had similar mannerisms, similar personality. So I was so excited. I was like, oh God, we did it. This is it. And so she went through all her appointments. I was checking in every day, like, how's she doing? Everything's good. And there was, oh yeah, she's great. She's great. And then I'll never forget, my doctor called. We were like in the TJ Maxx parking lot. And she's like, I need to talk to you guys. It was the day before her retrieval. And we're like, okay, what's going on? And she's like, well, I have good news and bad news. And I'm like, what? Okay. She said, the good news is your egg donor really is like you, Victoria, but the bad news is her eggs are too. And I was crushed. I was like, what are you talking about? Like how this was my Hail Mary. Like it took everything in me to get to that point. How could this happen? This must be that I'm cursed. Like this must be the universe saying I'm not meant to be a mom. And so I spiraled, and I truly, that was my like darkest time of my life. I couldn't be around friends with babies. I couldn't handle pregnancy announcements. I couldn't even be around my own family around Christmas because my sister had a baby. Um, so I just withdrew from everyone and took a trip to Thailand with my husband. And I was not spiritual at all. I was not religious at all until I went to Thailand, and everything changed. And I was just like, we have to like lean into a different perspective to all this. And we got to try again. And we were like so maxed out on expenses, but I was like, we're going to pull it together with 401ks and credit cards, and we're just going to do it. And we went back. We ended up getting a new doctor. I just, even though my doctor was amazing, my first doctor, I just felt like I had to just have a fresh look at all this.
Mhm.
And so we did, and we chose a new egg donor who she was not my twin. Similar, characteristic of blonde hair, blue eyes, but that's about it. But I connected on a few other things, like her favorite movie was Step Brothers, which was also my favorite movie. And like just little things that I was like, okay, that's cool. Like we have very similar heritage. That's something I could still pass on. And we got 3 embryos with that cycle, and the first one worked, and it was my daughter Florence, who's now 5.5 years old. Um, and so we thought, okay, this is going to mean we have 3 kids. Like then our new vision was we're going to have 3 kids. Like this is amazing. And then those other 2 embryos did not take, unfortunately, and that was another dark place for me because now I'm not just grieving my own loss, I'm grieving my daughter's siblings.
Mhm.
And my husband obviously was grieving that. And after she got here and we were like, God, she's everything to us. She's our like everything. I mean, she's truly like my soulmate. I just pictured those other 2 like also being that, And so then I was like even more connected to them, even though they had 0 parts of me in the dish they were frozen in. Um, and so I was, we were coming to terms with this is just, we're going to be a one-child family and this is okay for us. But my daughter kept pushing me and she said, you can do it, Mama. Just get new eggs. Just get new eggs. And I'm like, well, I can't just go to Trader Joe's and get new eggs. Like that's not how it works. It's not that easy. And she would look at me and say, well, we can do hard things, Mama. Like all the things that I say to
Oh.
her, she's like saying back to me, and I'm like, damn it, she's good. Um, and
You
so
taught her well.
I guess so. I guess so. And so I said, you know what? Let's try frozen eggs. It's more affordable, it's faster. But I wanted an open relationship with the donor, which I found, which I'm so grateful that I even found something like that and moved forward with it. We
Can you tell us a little bit? Sorry to interject here
Yeah,
for a
sure.
second, Victoria. When you say open relationship versus
Yes,
closed relationship,
right. So
what's the difference?
So with Florence's egg donor, we back then everything was anonymous, meaning like I didn't know her name. I had her picture and I knew her medical history and her family history, but I didn't know who she was. I now know because I've found her through 23andMe and also Instagram. But I knew that after my daughter was born, that I so desperately needed access to this person. I needed to know that if I had a medical question, I could just email her and say, hey, like, does anyone in your family have this? Because this is showing up here, or I wanted her to be able to report to me as things changed because you only get that medical history on that date and then future, nobody's held accountable. And so I felt like I needed that for her. I still feel that way. And so for us starting this over, I knew, once you know better, you do better. And so I said, I can't do that again. And so therefore this egg donor, I do know her name. We do exchange emails. I've never met her in person, but I know who she is. She knows who I am. And so that's the difference. And so typically with frozen eggs, it's harder to find that because sometimes these eggs were frozen in time and these women have moved on and had signed these agreements and the agency's like, well, I don't even know where they are anymore. I can't contact them. So this was a unique situation. But I do think moving forward, a lot of agencies and banks are starting to move in that direction, which is great. Um,
So it was in
Go
the
ahead.
past, it sounds like it was industry standard to keep it pretty anonymous
Yes. Yep.
for donors.
Yes. And the doctors and the agencies, they are all telling you, oh, it's better this way, and you don't know any better because you're just, again, wanting to be pregnant. And also at the time you're grieving so hard that you're like, you're right. Why would I want this third
Mhm.
person in my life? Like
Right,
I'm
right.
finally going to get my baby. Um, you're not thinking about the child's needs. Like you're just thinking this feels safer because what if this person tries to like come into our life? Um, but now that again, now that I'm on the other side, it's so clear to me like that that's important because I'm not threatened. My bond is so strong with my children. I'm not threatened by this third person. And in talks with our second egg donor, and now knowing her, it's so clear she wants to know, like, she's not trying to be the mom, is what I'm saying.
Right. Right.
She's, in her early 20s, and she's so sweet. She's just like, oh, he's cute. Thanks for sending the picture. Like, oh no, my family doesn't have that or whatever. Like, it's just
Mm.
a nice like relationship that we have. So I'm still pushing for one with the first. She at least accepted me to follow her on Instagram. So now I get to creep on her. But
It's a work in progress,
it's a work
right?
in progress. Yeah, she
Yeah.
hasn't
Yeah.
responded to me, which, maybe one day she will. But she has her own
Well, I
kids,
think,
so I know she's got her own, thing going
mhm.
on.
Well, it makes a lot of sense now that you're on the other side of it. I think like you were saying in the beginning, you don't realize the importance of knowing medical history and
Yeah,
social history,
right,
and like you really get a snapshot of somebody's health when they're in their 20s,
right,
right?
right. And you
And that's
think,
it.
oh wow, this is great because you get all these pages and you're like, oh, I got this is so much information. This is amazing. You're not thinking about what if, this woman gets diagnosed with breast cancer at 35. Like who's going to tell me? No one. They claim, oh yeah, if there's updates, they're required to tell us, but like who's holding them accountable? No one. It's not like she's going to get arrested if she doesn't do it.
Right, right.
Um,
So it's like an honor system.
Right. Right. And many of them forget too. They move on with their lives and they're not thinking, oh, I got to remember 20 years ago, who was that? I have to call them and tell them something, They're thinking about what's in front of them at that moment in their own personal life and their family.
Mhm. It just blows my mind how quickly things change. Like even within 3 to 5 years, this whole donor process
Yep.
has completely shifted.
Yeah.
So,
Majorly.
and what do you see coming up in the near future with the open relationships now?
Well, some states are already starting to require, like Colorado, for example, every relationship has to be open. So I think that other states will adopt that. I hope, my hope and dream is that the agencies and the banks start to do that. But again, it's until someone holds them accountable, they're going to do what is going to make them the most money, let's be honest. So I think there's some really good ones that are being ethical and doing and trying to make a change, which I think the louder they get, the other ones will have to start changing because they're going to
Mhm.
lose business. Um, but yeah, I mean, my dream would be that there was this just really normal, accepted, open, transparent, like community slash system that we could all be a part of that didn't feel like there was a stigma or a shame around it. Because if you look at adoption, there isn't really a stigma or shame around that,
Mhm.
and it's everyone operates under a system a system that works. Our system's very broken. Anyone can open an egg donor agency. Literally anyone. It's not regulated, and so we're the ones that have to pay for all of these. I'm trying to use the right words, malpractices, if you will, in my
Mhm.
opinion.
Mhm.
It's us, it's our kids that are having to carry the burden of their mistakes. Meanwhile, they're like cashing in. Um, so I not trying to be Debbie Downer. There's some good ones out there that are
Mhm.
doing the right thing. And I do see that growing. I see that becoming the forefront of this conversation because more recipient parents are seeing that and are loud about it. Donor conceived people are being loud about it. So I just think it's just a matter of time, before we start
Well,
to see things.
I
Yeah,
sure hope that this continues this trend to shift in the next upcoming years.
me too.
So going back to your journey, I'm sorry, I totally digressed us
No,
into
it's
this
great.
topic. I just think it's so interesting and how, and I'm sure a lot of couples are wondering, there's so many things around donor conception. So thank you
And
for
not just
sharing that.
couples, like a lot of single women too,
That's right.
single men
Mhm.
even.
Mhm.
are now, because of third-party reproduction, able to start their families, which is also a really incredible thing that we didn't have years ago.
Yeah, so much, and it just continues to grow and expand.
Yeah.
So, but please continue sharing your journey because I know that there's more along your journey
Oh my
that
gosh, yeah, I totally forgot. I'm so ADD. Yes. So there's
I distracted you.
no, I easily get distracted. Um, uh, what was I saying? Oh, so the two, I forget where I left off, but essentially with that new egg donor from the frozen, we ended up with two strong embryos. One was genetically tested. The other one came back inconclusive, although it looked strong. There was just the wrong cells were grabbed, or we didn't have enough information. And so I was doing an ERA preparing for that. And I went in and I got canceled because I'd ovulated. I'm like, oh my God, seriously. She's like, come back, we'll do it again. Started at ERA again, got canceled again because I was pregnant and I had no idea. Um, and I'll never forget, she brought in the test, the pregnancy test, and she said, Victoria, um, look at this. And I said, fuck, I've COVID. And she was like,
Yeah.
no, this is not a COVID test. I'm like, well, what the hell is it then? She's like, it's a pregnancy test. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you're pregnant. I was like, how? She's like, you tell me. And I was like, what? And I was like, and I started to get mad actually, because I'm like, no, this isn't right. Test me again. Like, this is bullshit. I'm here for an ERA. This is my second one. I need to just do this, check it off the list so I can get pregnant. She's like, no, but you are pregnant. I'm like, let me pee again. And she was like, okay. So I literally ran down the hall with my ass out of that paper dress thing. And I'm just like, I got more pee. She's like, great. So I go and I pee again. And sure enough, she's like, it's darker. You're still pregnant. I'm like, what? So I called my husband who's waiting in the car because I'm having this procedure. He was my driver. And I was like, hey, can you remember like around like 2 weeks ago, did we have sex? He's like, what? What are you talking about? And then he was like, well, yeah, I think so. I was like, he's like, why are you asking me this? I said, somehow I'm pregnant. And he was like, already? He still wasn't getting it. He thought like I did an IVF somehow while he was in the car. He's like, that was quick. I'm like, no, 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 listen. And he was like, oh, wow, cool. I said, no, I don't think this is a cool. And he was like, it's not. I'm like, there's no way this baby's gonna make it. And he was like, well, maybe just give it hope. And I got home and my mom was there. She was watching my daughter and she was like, well, how'd it go? And I said, well, I somehow have a positive, I couldn't even say I'm pregnant. I said, somehow the pregnancy test was positive. She was like, what? And I was like, somehow, like it was 2 lines. And she's like, are you saying you're pregnant? I said, yeah. She goes, oh my God. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, don't get excited. And she was like, well, can we get a little excited? I'm like, no. And so I just struggled with that. And then the days went on, I kept peeing at home and it was still 2 lines and it was getting darker and it was getting darker. And so then I started to get excited. Now I'm gonna cry. And I thought, how could I possibly, at 43 years old, um, get pregnant on my own for the first time? This is like a true miracle. And you and I have talked about this. Like, I'll never forget what you said to me. You said you manifested this, Victoria. Um, because I was so all in on the spiritual stuff and talking to the baby and just really trying to connect and call in, this soul or these spirits. And long story short, as you know, the baby did not make it. But like I wasn't sad because that baby had my genetics. Like people would ask me, like, oh God, that must have been extra hard. I'm like, no, 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 you're all wrong. It's not that it was extra hard. Because that baby had my genetics. Like I actually didn't even think of that. I literally didn't even cross my mind. It was just that I was pregnant and I had a baby inside of me that I had to let go. And it was another sibling for Florence. And so after we took some time to grieve that, I did get COVID and thought, okay, great, universe, thanks. Like, just keep pushing this back for me. I'm just, why? And I had seen so many mediums and spirit people that were just like, the timing is important. The timing is important. I'm like, well, when's the fucking time? Because I'm so over this. I just want to be pregnant. And they're like, it has to be right. The timing has to be right. And so I went in after having COVID and I thought she's going to cancel me again. And she tested all my labs and COVID had left my body, of course, at this point. I think it had been like 2 weeks. And she was like, oh my God, Victoria, you have never had better hormones. Like everything, your estrogen is right where we need it to be. We're going to do a natural cycle. I'm like, a natural cycle for me? Are you sure? And she's like, yeah, let's just do it. We've got your test embryo, because that was the one that was inconclusive. She's like, let's just give it a shot. We have the other one for a backup plan. And I'm like, okay, why not? Let's do it. And that embryo is now my beautiful 1-year-old little boy who, gosh, he's like incredible. I'm gonna now see, once I start crying, I can't stop. And he truly
Sorry,
was
Victoria.
the one, like timing was important. And it was important to him. It was important to me. It was important to Florence. It was important to Jonathan. Like it was the right time. And I was trying to put everything on my timeline, but it needed to be his. And I'm so glad that I did keep going back and going through all that bullshit. I do believe that he was always the one. He is like, he's completed our family. He fits so perfectly. He's just like, I don't know. He's just incredible.
He's so beautiful.
And he just turned 1 and now here we are, and now we have an embryo left that we struggle with because, I think our family's complete and I just don't think we could do it all again. I've said that before. I always say never. But we also had a baby who didn't sleep for a year. So
It's the wrong time to ask.
yeah, right.
It's not the right time. Yeah.
But he's been sleeping for 2 weeks now, so we're just like, but yeah, that's my story. It's always evolving, and my goal is just to always, show that this can be a very normal, accepting way, or accepted way to become a parent. And I don't want there to ever be shame around this. I think the more we talk about it, the more we share about it, the more we show people like, hey, this is our family. I think that eventually it will just be an accepted, normal way. At least I hope, anyway.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Victoria. I know your story, but every time I hear it, I just, I think about the perseverance and the patience. I have
Yeah.
this saying that I share with all my patients that are going through, quite the journey to get pregnant. I always say patience plus perseverance equals healthy pregnancy. It's like the 3 Ps. You just gotta, and like just hearing you talk about even the rounds that you went through for Vaughn and all the canceled cycles. And I still remember you would give me updates. I'm like, what? How? What? How? Like, how
I
did
know.
they cancel? Like, how did you ovulate on your own? And it was just one of those things that that there's this divine plan. There's a plan that's bigger, that's outside of our control. And these spirit babies come when they want to come. And they
Yeah.
already rule even before they're in utero, don't they? I mean, they set the tone, they set the timeline. So
Yeah.
these little beautiful spirit babies are about to come into our lives. And some of them are meant to stay and some are meant to just come for a moment and be there to give us hope to know that, we can get pregnant.
Yeah.
But they absolutely control the timeline. They come when they're ready, not when
Yeah.
we want them to come in, right? This is a
Yeah.
great example of that.
Yes.
And
100%.
so, yeah, and that is a continuous conversation that I have with my patients. Because as you know, I mean, when you're going through IVF, everything's so regimented, right? And the protocols is like exact and the timeline, like here's your protocol. This is, and so you get used to things being so controlled.
Yes.
And when they don't work out, the disappointment, when the timeline's thrown off, I mean, the sadness I see in my patients and the level of disappointment. And so I always go back and I think about your story and I think, and I share bits of other other patient stories that I've, had the honor to be a part of, and just say, look, don't worry, everything is divinely guided perfectly for you and your family. So just be patient and hang in there because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
I always feel like you can't screw up what's meant for you.
mhm,
Like it's going to come to you, but you just have to kind of surrender to the time of it,
mhm,
like he was always meant for me, there's no question, but not when I tried those other times, not through those other embryos that were from the first egg donor. He needed this version of me right here, right now as a parent. And I needed him at this time in my life. So I think it's the universe was just saying it wasn't the right time. And at the time, anyone that would say that to me, I'd be like, go fuck yourself. Um, but now I'm like, no, 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 this was the time. This was always the time.
yeah. And thank you for sharing that because I just, I, I want everyone to know that the sooner you surrender, the easier it is for you along this journey. And I think the
I hope
more
it's
you
okay
hold
that I'm
on
thirsty.
tight, no,
I should
that's
have
great.
asked.
I I expected no less,
Okay, great.
Victoria.
Perfect. You know me.
But yeah, I mean, I think everyone out there needs to know just the sooner you can surrender and give up control,
Yeah.
the easier it's going to be for you. Because I
Mhm.
think the more you hold on to that control or the, the idea that you think you're controlling everything, the easier it is for you
One of
to
the things
navigate the journey.
that you taught me that are just implemented into my life now that I can't live without is different cards, like spirit baby cards, angel cards, tarot cards of any sort.
Mhm.
Still to this day, whenever I have like anxiety or worry about something, I sit down with my cards and I just ask for guidance. And it's something that I don't know, I find a lot of peace in because it helps me surrender. It helps me just trust like someone else has got this. It's not me. It's not my problem to solve. Like but it's under control.
Mhm.
And those cards really, I've now started doing readings for people, not as a profession, just for fun. Like anytime a friend is like, oh, I'm struggling with this, I'm like, let me do a card for you. They're like, oh, sure. Okay. I don't know if it's working or not.
What a wonderful gift for them though. You're very
Yeah.
good at it. I've seen you,
You're
in
so
some of
sweet.
our workshops together where we were just kind of like, hey, let's do some cards. And
Yep.
the right card always shows up
Yep.
for the person. And if you were to say the top like two or three things that really helped you through this process to navigate the journey and help with stress, anxiety, and like that sort of that overwhelm that you get when you realize that you are losing control or that you don't have control, do you have what would the top
That's
three
definitely
things
one of
be?
them. Like those
Mhm.
cards are everything to me. And then just having a support system, like whether it be people in a support group or a friend who's been through it or someone like you, to talk to be able to like share feelings and struggles and be validated versus like telling maybe the wrong person who you might and like think they're a safe person because they're your best friend or your mom or your sister or your aunt. But if they haven't been through it, it's sometimes hard for them to know what to say back to you. And that can just send you deeper into that sad place. And so
Mhm.
having safe people that maybe aren't who you expect them to be is so important. Like you have to get these feelings out because otherwise they just stay stuck at the top of your head or heart or whatever you want to say.
Mhm.
And they've got to just funnel through. They've got to come out. It's going to screw up your whole like just well-being if you don't get them out. And the faster you get them out, the more often you get them out, the quicker you heal, to
Mhm.
be able to like move forward in whatever that is.
I think
Um,
that's great advice. There's sometimes I think a subconscious suppression that happens when you're
yep.
going through treatments, and I think you don't even realize you're doing it.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, okay, I'm going to get through to this next level, to this next test, to this next phase, and um, I think that's perfect advice.
Thank you.
Sometimes releasing it and letting it come out through the surface just so it doesn't come up, like sometimes it can come up in random ways that you don't even realize. And if you can kind of address it ahead of time, I think
Right.
patients do way better than
Right.
when all of a sudden it hits you. And, you just, and let's be real, the amount of medications you're on and
Right.
hormones does
Definitely.
not help,
No.
right? So like that anxiety and the panic that can come along during those times. So tell me a little bit more. And I know you've written a couple books, Victoria. So I just want all the listeners to know about how they can learn more about egg donor process. And I know you're about to release a children's book, which is super exciting.
Yes, I'm so excited. So yeah, so I wrote a ebook available on my website that's called Why I'm Glad My Eggs Didn't Work. Spoiler alert, it's my daughter and now my son. But in that book, I talk about sort of the different processes that you have to go through. Like the genetic grief is a big one. Like a lot of people don't understand genetic grief, and it's actually considered disenfranchised grief because society doesn't know how to respond to people grieving something they can't see. Um, when it's so visible to us, like it's so clear that it's there, but they don't know how to show up for someone who is grieving their genetics or grieving the loss of a pregnancy or a IVF failure. They know how to show up if you've lost a family member, sure, right? Like there's funerals, there's casseroles and flowers and cards and all the things. But again, when people can't support you, then it just again pushes you down further. So in that book, I just talk a lot about the things that I've been through, and just addressing like, hey, yeah, this sucks, right? Like, this is really hard. But I also provide a lot of hope and a lot of inspiration because all of the books that I read that are out there scared the hell out of me. It was more of a like, yeah, this is great, but you should worry about this or think about this. And most of them were written by therapists. They weren't written from like a person who's actually experienced it. A lot of great information in a lot of those, but I just wasn't ready for that yet in the beginning of my journey. I just needed someone to say, hey, I did it and it's all going to be okay. So that's why I wrote that book.
I love
And
that.
then my children's book, I don't know if I can even share, I have to ask my publisher what I'm allowed to share, but I'll say it's about dinosaurs because I don't think that's a huge surprise. If anyone follows me, they know that Florence and I have told dinosaur stories about eggs for many, many years, and it's a story we sort of crafted together. So this book is bringing that to life through two adorable dinosaurs, a mama and a baby. Um, but yeah,
So it's
so we're hoping to announce in April, we're hoping that we can do some pre-orders, and I'll be hopefully able to share some images at that point around Infertility Awareness Week. So, and Donor Conception Awareness Day, more specifically. That's my goal anyway. So hopefully we can pull that off.
that's so exciting. Can't wait. It's coming up. It's just around the corner.
That's right.
So now Florence can say she co-wrote a book
That's right.
and
Yeah.
that she's an author.
Oh, and she's had opinions about the images too. She's like, I know that looks weird. You got to change that. I'm like, okay, little editor. That's
She's going to be one of the youngest authors out there.
right.
So that's so exciting. Can't wait to see all the incredible things that are going to come out with this book. And I'm sure, and I know you and I had talked about it's going to be in paper form, but maybe
Yep.
potentially I can see it being like a really fun audible too.
Yeah,
So
maybe. Who knows? Anything possible. Yeah. Yeah. This will be a
narrated by you and Florence, that'd be so cute.
oh gosh. Yes, that would be fun.
So if anybody wants to get in touch with you or the Infertility Unfiltered group, what's the best way for them to reach you?
So for Infertility Unfiltered, we have our own Instagram that's Infertility Unfiltered, but I would say using our email, which is hello@Infertility Unfiltered, or just visiting our website too. There's lots of different options you can look at there. But if you're just feeling like, oh, I don't know which option, just reach out and we'll help you. And then me personally, just my Instagram is expecting anything.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Victoria, for your time. And I'll share all that in the show notes too.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm
you.
so excited that you're going to be my first guest. I can't wait to release
I'm excited too. Thank you for
it.
having
You're
me.
amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina.
Okay, let me stop recording so we can